Hey guys. Okay, so yeah, obviously the major thing to talk about with this chapter is Bakugo is back, reunited with Izuku, and from the sounds of it, the others from Class 1A, from previous Class 1A, all his friends, all of Izuku's friends, all of that aren't too far behind. But the thing about this reunion, for as hyped up as it is for me, is kind of one of those things where I'm wondering if, contrary to what the second believes, it might be a little too late in fully convincing. Too late, at least when it comes to convincing Izuku to kind of come back to team up with them again. At least pretty much in the way they're thinking. I mean, I have no doubt that Izuku's reunion with Bakugo in Class 1A will, at least in some form or another, bring Izuku back from the land of the living, so to speak, and just bring him back a little bit to a little bit to at least something of resembling of what he used to be. But at the same time, as his predecessor said, Izuku at this point has fully committed himself to the burden of ending All for One's reign. That he to the point that he doesn't really even seem to care anymore what he has to sacrifice of himself well, pretty much to achieve it, even if he has to even if it results in the loss of his own humanity to him. There's no other option towards like creating that more peaceful world he envisions for his friends, not realizing that pushing himself forward in that direction and allowing himself to be consumed by that desperation and that madness has 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 kind of put him in this position where he's lost sight of even of like everything. He in this chapter, honestly, I'd even dare say he's lost sight of even the basic reason as to why he wants to find Shigaraki to begin with. Like which the initial reason was pretty much to save Shigaraki. But in the way it's presented in this chapter, it sounds like he's not even like it almost sounds like he's pretty much not even on that path anymore. He just wants to stop like Shigaraki and all for one, even if it means doing what every other hero has done. So it's like so it's like in this so it's like I don't think he's even thinking clearly in terms of of even saving Shigaraki anymore. He just wants to stop him. And to that end, even though Horikoshi has spent several chapters now beating down and breaking Izuku to his fundamental emotional core, it's gonna take more. To me, it's gonna take more than just a simple sit down and reminiscing about old times in order for I think Class 1A to convince him to accept their help. And I think the only way to do that, honestly, is to make Izuku realize just from what he's become is basically the complete opposite of what he wanted to be. But Izuku himself also has to realize Izuku has to realize himself that he's becoming the very thing All for One wants him to be. Like I think pretty much part of pretty much only way in which Horikoshi can handle this, and I think he himself even realizes this is if he genuinely has Izuku do some if he has Izuku do some pretty much like genuine self reflection on who he used to be, on what he used to like dream about, like all that. I think just doing that basic self-reflection aspect, I think, is the only way of truly saving Izuku at this point. Like obviously his friends are going to be there in order to kind of just at least push him forward in that direction. But I think Izuku himself has to realize it though. Now, with that with that said, there is a bit of a theory I've heard kind of whispers about that the second wielder could in some way be related to Bakugo, and it's one of those things that I'm not necessarily going to rule out because I know so little because we know so little about Bakugo's family. So it is possible that the second wielder is related to Bakugo in some way. But at the same time, I kind of hope it's just a coincidence of two characters having similar features. Because if Horikoshi tries to connect Bakugo and the second together as family, it would honestly just feel so easy and in a certain respect make the world feel a bit smaller. So if pretty much everyone was related to a certain character, so Yeah, it's something. It's one of those things I'm not necessarily against, but I'm not necessarily in favor of it either. So yeah, I don't know. I'll see how this plays out, but I'm kind of just on the side of hopefully the second isn't related to Bakugo. Um, on the flip side of that, though, I like how even though the second was the one who was initially against Izuku being his predecessor, he was also ultimately the one to realize that even though Izuku was becoming stronger and more adept through his pursuit of All for One, he was also the only one aside from us. He was the only one. He was the only one. He was the only one, and Nana as well, to realize just how far into this pit of self-destruction and disillusionment he was falling into. And yeah, like at this. So yeah, even though Izuku, like, I think has to self-reflect himself on how he changes from here, it is Bakugo and possibly the others showing up what's going to at least trigger the change, I think. Uh, so going off, but with going off what I said about the reunion between Bakugo and Izuku, one scene I really liked in this chapter that I think will play a huge part in how the next chapter plays out when the manga returns in 2 weeks. Because yeah, for those who didn't notice, the pretty much manga is going on a 2 week hiatus, which but whatever, it is what it is. But when the manga does return in 2 weeks, is when we see that the scene I like is when we see that woman ask Izuku if he's allied with All for One, and obviously Izuku says, "What? No, I'm not." But the thing is, in that it was only a brief moment. It was only a brief scene, but for that very brief moment in time, and looking at how scared the woman was, Izuku did get a glimpse in the mirror at what he had become, and I feel that will play a part into how he finally opens up towards accepting help from his previous classmates again. Which, on that note, I'm kind of fighting with myself with whether or not I'm gonna like how the reunion will play out from here, because on one hand, the current circumstances of the world aren't exactly ideal to show a time skip training montage or anything like that. But I always kind of did imagine that Horikoshi would at least show us what Class 1A was up to after Izuku left, even before this reunion. But the more I think about it as well, the more I think it would make sense in order to reintroduce Class 1A first, and then pretty much like possibly show us what they've been up to. But like pretty much maybe we'll still pretty much get that now that Horikoshi has set the stage for this reunion. With that being said, one of the biggest weaknesses of this chapter I found for me was definitely Dictator. I mean, it's Dictator as a villain is just kind of one of those is just kind of one of those it's just kind of one of those villains where it wasn't like I was expecting necessarily a villain on the level of Chisaki or anything, and he does still in his own way have a very frightening quirk, but it's just overall one of those things where the moment he popped on screen, he felt like a pure plot device in order to have someone come in and save Izuku. Now granted, I wasn't expecting Bakugo, but yeah, even if the moment he popped on screen, it's like, okay, who's gonna be the one to save Izuku here? Like he's just kind of got that feeling of he just kind of had that instant feeling of, okay, this guy's a plot device villain, and maybe he'll have more to do when the manga returns, but at the same time, yeah, he's already set the mood as just a villain meant to show Izuku and Bakugo teaming up again and showcase maybe Class 1A's return after so long. But that's really the only worth I see in him right now as a character. But yeah, yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. Enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm on Twitter, Analyst, Crunchyroll, and be sure to hit the like button and as well as the notification bell and notification button, and just share this around, guys. Death Knight of Enemy, signing off. Later.